Take their seats, please. Always hate to interrupt good conversation, even if that conversation involves Charles Fenstermaker. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Vibrant Community Summit. We're very excited about this. We've been looking forward to this for a very, very long time. We've had a lot of people that have worked very, very hard on this, not the least of which are two people that I want to mention right now, and that's Donna Landry with Lords. Where's Donna? There she is. And Angela Morrison with Meritus Credit Union. Unfortunately, Angela couldn't be with us for the event. She had a passing in her family. So I would like to ask everyone to remember her in your thoughts and prayers. She worked very diligently on this, and I know that she hates to miss it, and we wish she could be here with us. I'm Troy Wayman, by the way. I'm the president and CEO of One Acadiana. One Acadiana serves a couple of purposes. We serve as a 9-parish regional economic development organization, but we also serve as Lafayette's Chamber of Commerce. And we're very proud of that. And so we try to focus on some local issues when possible for Lafayette and be the voice of the business community here. And that's what was the genesis of this Vibrant Community Summit. We're very proud to have it here in downtown. I want to thank you, Sam Oliver and ACA, for hosting us here at this fine venue. Quint did ask me earlier. He said, "This is a fantastic venue. I really like this." He said, "Maybe I'll put one of these in downtown Pensacola." And he asked somebody, one of your staff, what it cost, and they said, around $26 million. He said, "Okay, maybe I'll put something else in downtown Pensacola." So I told him that he could probably get it for around 20. So, if he shopped right, he could probably figure that out. This event would not be possible tonight without our sponsors, and I have a long list of those sponsors, people that have been very supportive of this. Auctioneer Lafayette General is our presenting sponsor for tonight. Acadian Companies, very generous sponsor. LHC Group, Our Lady of Lourdes Regional Medical Center, the Lafayette Public Trust Financing Authority, or LPTFA, Iberia Bank, a division of First Horizon Bank, the Acadiana Advocate, Meritus Credit Union, Executone of Louisiana, Keene Miller, Downtown Lafayette. They're going to be helping us specifically with the concert that follows tonight's event. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana, Jack and Associates, Angel Architects, Keedy Real Estate, the Gleason Group, and Amedesis Home Health. Very, very appreciative of these sponsors. Let's give them a round of applause. And representing our presenting sponsor tonight, Auctioneer Lafayette General, is the CEO, Mr. Patrick Gandy. And I'd like to invite him up to introduce our featured speaker.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Troy. So I have a few prepared notes. Really excited to be here tonight, to be able to introduce Quint. When Troy reached out and asked if Auctioneer Lafayette General would be interested in being the presenting sponsor for the summit, and let us know that Quint was going to be the featured speaker, it was an immediate yes, because we have a long history with Quint. David Calicod, who's actually here tonight, my predecessor as CEO of our organization some years ago, pulled the senior team together, and we went to a conference in Houston, taking you and your organization to the next level. It was a Studer Group conference, and I remember thinking to myself at that time, I was like, this is going to be a huge waste of time. And so we get to the conference, and met Quint, and within the first 5 minutes, and I think you'll see, Quint uses a mixture of humor and common sense approach to leadership, to community, And I saw that very quickly, and in the first 5 minutes was fully engaged, and it ended up being a fantastic conference, but really the start of a long relationship with our organization. And so, that was in 2009, and after that, had the privilege to go to Pensacola for a number of conferences and meetings with the Studer group, which were all great, and training our teams and teaching them about leadership. But what I really remember, even 10 plus years ago, at those conferences and in those meetings, Quint always talked about how important it was for the Studer group to have those conferences in Pensacola, because it was supporting the local economy and having folks from all over the country come and visit with the Studer group and, for meetings and conferences. And he spoke of community heavily then, and that's why I'm so excited about hearing what he has to say tonight. So Quint has written numerous books, most recently Building a Vibrant Community, How Citizen-Powered Change is Reshaping America. But he has written many books on leadership, physician burnout, numerous healthcare and leadership topics and community-related topics. And I can say that I have read almost all of them. Maybe one or two I've not read. But if you've not read any of his books, I would strongly recommend that you do so, because like his presentation, you'll find in his books, again, mixing humor with a common sense approach to whatever the subject matter is. So Quint serves on numerous healthcare boards. He's obviously a frequent speaker, workshop facilitator, currently serves as entrepreneur in residence at the University of West Florida, executive in residence at George Washington University, and lecturer at Cornell University. So Ochsner Lafayette General is so excited to partner with One Acadiana in hosting such a dynamic leader. And from personal experience, I can tell you his message is going to resonate in our community. So I'm so excited to hear him speak tonight, and I welcome Mr. Quint Studer.
Whoa, it's nice to be here. I've had a busy day. A couple of things as this ends, we might talk a little bit. I'm deaf on my right side, so I bring that up because people come up to you and talk, and I learned this in hospitals. I didn't tell people I was deaf on my right side, and I hear a little bit on my left side. And one day, John, the transporter, comes up to me and says, "Are you mad at me?" And it took a lot of guts to come up to the CEO and say, "Are you mad at me?" And I said, "No, I'm not mad at you, John. Why?" He said, "Well, the other day I said hello to you and you walked right by me." Well, that's because I didn't hear him. But it impacted me so much, because who wants to hurt people's feelings, that I always tell people, about my hearing. When I go into a restaurant, when I go in everywhere, it's been very nice too. It's people from Lourdes and, a nurse came up to me one day and said, I've never wanted to wear my hearing aid because I thought they'd think less of me. But now I understand that maybe I'm missing some things with physicians. So it was sort of nice to do that. So I only hear in this ear, and I love music. And how is stereo? Is it good? My wife's passive aggressive. No, she really is. She got surround sound. Now, how much sense does that make for a guy that only's got one ear? And then when people call your name, you don't know where to look. When you're hearing impaired, you only got one ear, you're scared a lot. The ambulance is coming, right, Richard? An ambulance is coming, and I don't know which way to turn, which way to look. And you can get in trouble when you don't hear right. and so on. And you can even get in fights almost when you don't hear well. So I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I don't want to get in any fights tonight. So I'm going to just give you a little thought. I've been trained to turn to my left right away. So when I hear any noise, I go like this. So for example, if David right here is one of my dear friends, would say to me, hey, Quint, I think he's over there. So I look this way, and then I eventually turn. So whenever I hear my name, I turn right away. Now, when you do what I do, when people see you, they tend to go, Quint. So if we're in the men's restroom tonight, guys. Now, if you don't like the guy next to you, just say, hey, Quint. So that's a little bit about that. So I'm excited. I've had a great day. Richard and I had a great morning. Is this a great person to have in your community? Then I went to LHC. Anybody know Marcus? I've known him since 1999. When I was president of Baptist Hospital, he came over to see me. Then I got to go to Lourdes, and what a great organization that is. You know, clean, but it's nice and intimate. Of course, Lafayette, Ochsner Lafayette General. I always tease, hospitals are changing their name so much right now. The only people making money in healthcare are the signage people. And so I got to go there, and David and I go back to Indiana. I knew him when he was in Indiana, so what a thrill to be here. Got to go through your federal qualified healthcare clinic, all sorts of great things. Got to see you. It's interesting too, because sometimes when you have an outside perspective, you have a fresh set of eyes. So for example, with employees, one of the things I'm a big believer in, new employees are so valuable because they see you with a fresh pair of eyes. And I have a thing in my books that you meet with every new employee on the 30th day, and one of the things you ask them about is, you've been other places. What can we do that you've seen other places that would make us better? Because they've probably been told, don't tell people where you used to work. They don't want to hear about where you were, and you get these great ideas. So sometimes fresh eyes really make a difference. So I have some fresh eyes. I also have some of your eyes, because 280-something of you filled out a survey. So I have a little bit of what you think. So we're going to walk through tonight, and I think we'll have a good time. That's my cell phone number. I've given it out for years. When I was president of a hospital, every patient got my personal phone number. People would say, anybody ever call you? Yep. Yep. But I tell you, when it's right there and the staff sees my personal phone number, they really prefer they don't call me unless it's positive. But I did get a call one day. It was sort of cute. 10 o'clock at night, I get a call, and I answered the phone, and she says, Quint Studer? I said, yeah. She goes, this is really you? I thought this was just a marketing gimmick with your phone. She said, my aunt is having heart surgery at your hospital, and I love my aunt, and I just want to know, are you guys any good? Now, I said, well, I'm the president of the hospital, so of course I'm going to tell you we're good. But let me do this. Let me call Steve Cannon, who's the head of cardiovascular surgery at our hospital, and if he's awake on Sunday night, I'll have him call you, and he can tell you all about our cardiovascular service. Forgot about it, really. That afternoon, when I was president of the hospital, my assistant said, some woman came in, you talked to her last night, and she said everything went well. So that's about what I thought of it. It was nice. Well, then they had a thing in our community for helping people with disabilities, which I have. So I got invited. They sat people at a table, and then, people that have various different needs. So then you get up and you tell them what your deal was, and I would. And I always said this. I said, if you come to Baptist Hospital, nobody will take you to where you're going. Nobody will point. And before we leave your room, we'll say, is there anything more for you? I have time. And then all of a sudden, this lady raised her hand. Remember, I'd never seen this lady. She goes, I want to say something. Now, when you're president of the hospital, you do want that to happen. You're not assuming it's like your boss. It takes 3 positives to every 1 negative for somebody to feel good about another human being. That's research. Now it just got published again. It's even more. 3 to 1 is positive, 2 to 1 is negative, or neutral, 1 to 1 is negative. So how many of you right now, are there certain people, if you saw a text that said, call me when you can, is your first thought, oh, good? You know what I mean? Is it, Pete, you worked for David a long time. When you see that thing from David Calicod, say, call me when you can, is your first thought, here comes more reward and recognition? Can't he just stop it for one moment? By the way, there's some other research. So it's 3 to 1 in the workplace. 3 to 1 in the workplace, it's 3 to 1 to positive. Now in personal lives, marriage, partnerships, it's 5 to 1. If you have 5 compliments to every 1 criticism, the divorce rate is 6%. 4 to 1 is 50%. Now I will tell you, a lot of women are nodding their heads right now. You guys are as still as you can possibly be right now. But guys, I'm your friend. I would never let a guy be in women stick together, don't they? I got daughters and my wife, and no matter what happens, they gang up on me. It's just they gang up on me. So us guys got to stick together a little better. So I'm not going to give you this 5 to 1 without telling you how to do 5 to 1, because it's hard. When I first heard this, I said, that's impossible. I don't know if I'll ever remember 5 to 1. I said, I know, I'll do what I always do when I want to remember something. I'll ask my wife to remind me to compliment her 5 times. And then I thought, probably not. So I'm going to help you. Here's what you do. You binge compliment, guys. There's no rule that says you got to separate these things. You just look at her and you say, hey, like your shoes, like your slacks, like your top, like your necklace, your hair looks good. That's 5. They've done more research, though, men. Any compliment after 9 p.m. doesn't count. And isn't that sort of when we just start warming up, men? So that's my home phone number. So the lady raised her hand, and she stood up and she said, I called him at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. What he's saying is right. And isn't word of mouth the best thing in the world? Whether it's a hospital, whether it's a business, or whether it's a community. It's all word of mouth. We find all these cities that do, and I'm sure somebody will be upset. You can do all the advertisement you want, but it's all based on word of mouth. I've had 3, 4 people come up to me today and tell me, I've been to Pensacola. I love Palafox. I love Palafox. It's not because there's a marketing program, not that that doesn't fit somewhere, but it's all about place. My wife and I went to Savannah. We didn't go to Savannah because we read an advertisement. How many of you have ever been to Savannah? Why did we go to Savannah? Because we heard it was a cool place. Then we went to Charleston. Anybody ever been to Charleston? Then we popped into Asheville, which is another cool place. Then you maybe go to Greenville, which is another cool place. Nashville isn't bad. You go to the Portland, Maine. Because one of the things when Gallup looked at cities, they found out Portland, Maine is a real cool city. And Bangor, Maine sucks. If you look at both of them, I'm sure Bangor's not happy with me, but they're different here. And because Gallup did a study I'm going to talk about, and they said it's not location. It's not location at all. It's basically different things. So we're going to talk about how to create those different things. How to create those different things. So Lafayette is the next Austin, Texas, but better. So Lafayette. Reminds me, years ago, I was working at Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt said to me, they said, we want to be the Mayo Clinic of the South. I said, why? Why don't you be so good that Mayo Clinic says we're the Vanderbilt of the North? What we want in the next 10 years is from Austin, Texas to say someday we want to be like Lafayette, Louisiana. I go to certain cities and they're really interesting. You haven't done any of this, but they advertise the cool reason to live here is because you can get out of her place easy. No, they advertise. I spent a lot of years in Janesville, Wisconsin. You know why you should move to Janesville? Because it's easy to get to Madison, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and Chicago. You go to Columbia, Mississippi, and we told them they had to quit doing this. Go there, because you can go to Hattiesburg, Gulf Shores, and New Orleans. You don't want to advertise like that. You want to have them coming to you. I'm doing a project in Beloit, Wisconsin right now, and we started saying, we want people in Chicago to say, oh, good, it's the weekend, we're going to Beloit. That's sort of it. That's my number. I do a weekly column. That's my direct email. And these are a couple of the latest books. And my newest book for healthcare only is called The Calling. And I will tell you, Lafayette's in that book. And my books do pretty well. So hopefully a lot of people will be reading about Lafayette in my new book. So what do you want to walk away with? You want to walk away with these things in the next hour. An overview of your community assessment results, but you're going to get an overview. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to go into detail. So this is an overview. Tomorrow morning, we're doing more detail. The impact of training, and it's all about talent. You're going to hear me say that a lot. It's not shovel-ready land anymore. It's not incentives anymore. They can play a little part. It's talent. How many of you have adult children? Raise your hand. Wow, almost. Lafayette must be a romantic place. How many of you have an adult child that does not live around you? Oh, about the same amount of hands. How many of you have grandchildren that don't live around you? What we're talking about, we can't force them to come home, but we want them to be able to come home if they'd like to come home. And why don't they come home? Sometimes it's lack of opportunity. And you know what else it is? It's lack of place. They want to be in a pretty cool place. So what we're talking about is how do you make it so your kids don't want to leave? Your kids can't wait to graduate from college and stay. Your people that left come back home, and they bring a few people with them periodically, because that's really all about talent. And I'll show you a slide that demonstrates that. We want to talk about the key steps in building a vibrant community in the 4 gears. That's at least my perception of the 4 gears. I wrote the book. I didn't plan on writing this book, and let me tell you, I started out as a teacher of children with special needs. I did that just because my teachers made a huge impact on me. When I went to college and they said, what do you want to be? My parents didn't go to college. I didn't even know what like a major was. And they said, you got to major in something. And the people that had the biggest impact on me were my teachers. So I became a teacher. My person that had the biggest impact on me was my high school soccer coach, who happened to teach kids with special needs. So that's what I did, and I liked it. Now, if you have a child with special needs, like I talked about special talents, you got some concerns that most people don't have. Because the issue is, I don't want my child to die before me. But if they don't, and I die before them, who's going to take care of my adult child, who's an adult now, but can they live independently, which some can, some can't. So what you do is, first thing you do is you assess the child, then you set a big, hairy, audacious goal. Because I think your goal should be the best place to live in the world. Not in Louisiana, but in the world. Now, it doesn't mean you'll get there, but it's a good place to try to get to. With a child, we'd set the highest goal possible. We'd get everybody on the same team. We would measure. We would do with the best treatment protocol. A lot of reward and recognition. Recognized behavior gets repeated. It really does, and it gets repeated for adults too. And then there's some consequences. You have to tell people there's consequences. We had a girl named Martha that was absolutely gorgeous. We had to tell her not to get in cars with people she doesn't know, not to drink or eat anything that somebody has given her. It's a sad situation, but she could be taken advantage of, and so on. So really, that's what I took into healthcare. And so I'm working in healthcare, and one day, Mort O'Sullivan, who's my accountant, says, could you ever do for communities what you did do for healthcare? I said, never. It's so hard. It really is. Because see, if you're working with a hospital system, you have a CEO. So the CEO says, here's the direction we're going. Here's how we're going to measure it. Here's everybody show up for training and development. These are our standards of behavior. And oh, by the way, if you're not a good fit, you're going to be let go from the hospital. Anybody ever want to fire somebody in your community? You know what I mean? You just can't do that, can you? You ever want to sit here and say, I give you a verbal warning, a written warning? You're in Baton Rouge, baby, go. So it's hard. It's hard. So what happened in 2004 or 5? Gallup looked at Quint Studer Group. I did end up selling it in 2015. I'm not with it anymore. And but they had just done a study on why communities thrive and why they don't. And I got a copy of it. It intrigued me. Well, you know, when somebody turns on a light, you can't turn it off. All I did keep doing is looking at our community. Then when I would be traveling, I'd look for these other communities. So when I came back to Pensacola, I got involved in doing some things and investing some things, because who doesn't want to live in a better place? And sometimes I said this today at the reception before here, people say, oh, Quint moved to Pensacola and fell in love with it. I tell them some days I don't even like the place, but I do believe that if you live in a place, you have a human responsibility to do everything you can to make it the best place you can be. And you ever have somebody complain a lot about a city and then you wonder, why do you live here then? I mean, that's not a good thing about your intelligence if you tell people you live in a community that sucks and you stay in it. And sometimes you can and you can't. But so my message got there. So we're doing this stuff, and we're going to give you some results later. And my publicist calls me and said, you should write another book. And I thought she was talking about building Busy Leader Handbook that I wrote after this. She said, no, why don't you write a book on your community experience? I said, there's probably a lot of books on that. I'm not an urban planner. I'm not an architect. I'm not a land use development person. I'm just a guy in town that got involved with stuff. She said, yeah, but it'd be good because, you know, it's sort of like what most people are. And she said, you've gone through this is difficult stuff. I went through a referendum. I used to tell people the good news is I can move out of town and I don't have to pay a dime, because lots of people would send moving trucks to my house. So you go through this. You get a little dirt in your face. You go through people pushing back, and it really pushes your values. We were in a major downtown project. It got a lot of controversy, and my wife and I were getting notes to our house telling us we should move out of town. And she looked at me one day and she said, why are we doing this? So we had to sit down and say, why do you do this stuff? Because you're not getting paid to be here right now. Building a vibrant community is not your job. It wasn't my job. So why do we do these things? I think we do these things because our values doesn't allow us not to do them. When we see we can make something better, if we're value-driven, we cannot not do it. I know you have some things going on with litter now in your community. When I was at Holy Cross Hospital in Chicago, everybody's a housekeeper. Everybody's a housekeeper. Everybody picks up trash. Everybody picks up trash. And of course, when you're an executive, you got to do it because they're all watching you like a hawk, you know. So one day I'm at McDonald's, a drive-through, and I look, and there's a piece of trash on a bush. And of course, the first thing I say is, that is terrible. Somebody threw some trash on a bush. That is bad. Now, I was not thinking of getting out of my car to get that trash. I was just evaluating the person that littered, okay? So then I look, and there's a car behind me. I said, they probably are looking at me, wondering if I threw that trash out. Should I get out and pick it up? I don't think so. Then I started looking at their windshield. Are they an employee of Baptist Hospital? Because if they're an employee of Baptist Hospital and I don't pick up that trash, my name's going to be dirt in the hospital. Finally, I don't know if any of you are Catholic, but I'm a Catholic. Guilt came over me. Next thing I know, I'm out of my car, picking up that trash and throwing it away. Why? Because values will help us do uncomfortable things, because if we don't do them, we're even more uncomfortable. So that's why I wrote the book. I wouldn't write a book, and David knows me really well, unless we had objective measurement. So here's some objective measurement for you. We do a quality of life survey, and I think every city should do it. I hope you do it. Mason-Dixon does it. We don't do it. I found this company that does quality of life surveys for communities. Because what happens is we all say, oh, we got quality of life, we want quality of life, but we don't measure it. And they measure it. And one of the questions is, do you think that your community is moving in the right direction? Now, if you would have asked some people beforehand, some people would say yes, some people would say no, and some people would not know. Many of our people in leadership positions thought it was moving in the right direction. But we did a survey, and we found out 27% of the people thought it was moving in the right direction, and that's it. And by the way, we had some people in elected offices that fought the survey, and when they ran for office again, they didn't win, because the community understood that's where we were at. Well, now we're up in the 64th percentile. Now, I don't know if we can get much higher, but we can. Our issue right now is the African American community. While we've moved it up in other places, the people of color in our community don't think we've moved it up for them near as much as anybody else. So that's what we're focusing on now. But I will tell you, you're never going to get 100%. There's always going to get some people in your community that aren't going to like. Do you have any of these people that just don't like anything? You know what they call them, citizens against virtually everything. Okay? No, we got those. We got those. And I told the story, if I'm going to repeat it, I told it a little while ago. No, if God came to Pensacola and said, I've looked all over the world where to place heaven because I'm sort of want to relocate it, and I've decided to put it in downtown Pensacola, we'd have people fighting it because they don't want a gated community. So one of the challenges in this change effort, it's in my book, is not giving those people so much oxygen that they stop things. Because even though they're a small number of people, sometimes they can stop things. Because sometimes misinformation goes out. Now, do you want to be polite and kind and respectful? Absolutely. But don't let them stop things. Because if we would have let the 7,600 people that voted against taking toxic soil and making it something special downtown, we wouldn't have had these other numbers. Now, luckily, 10,000 voted yes. Now, today, if it came to Pensacola, it's hard to find anyone that would have said they voted against it. That's sort of how it works. So that's how I work, too. I have a baseball team, and in COVID, we turned our stadium into an Airbnb. It got national attention everywhere. That was not my idea. In fact, I thought it was a little stupid. Did I ever tell you my idea about turning our ballpark into an Airbnb? So anyway, we've had 34% increase in assessed property value. And in Florida, that doesn't mean because taxes have been raised, because we're limited on raising taxes. That means it's either new development or rehab development. We've had a 67% increase in downtown. We were named the strongest town winner by Strong Towns, and we were named the 15th best place to live in the nation, the 17th best place to start a business. And that's really, if you look at our quality of life survey in 2008, it wasn't the best place to start a business. And Palafox, our main drag, was named one of the 10 greatest streets in America. In fact, a new hotel comes into Pensacola, and they said, we need to be within a half a block of Palafox, because everybody wants to be where the party's at. And so you have a Palafox here. It's not named Palafox, but you have a pretty good downtown street. Now, I will tell you, it's got some gaps in its teeth. Because what you want in a downtown is you want a clean set of teeth. That means no gaps. Because if there's gaps, then people don't want to walk there. But I would say, you're going to see your results. You're pretty far along, but you still got too many vacant buildings. You got too small sidewalks and too wide streets. You've got it reversed. You know, today people want wide sidewalks and narrow streets. People want to bike. Anybody love biking? Is it easy to bike in this town? No, it's not easy in Pensacola. There was a big accident, you know, I don't know if you know this, there was a big accident May 22nd. Yeah, one of our big celebrities got hit by a car. In fact, my shoulder's still recovering from that. If you go online and go Quint Studer, hit and run Pensacola, you'll see all this coverage of my bike accident. So that's pretty cool. Now, also you got to put dollars to it, because we all need to be financially sustainable. How do you build affordable housing? You become a very profitable community, because then you can take the profits from other things and you can put it into things like affordable housing. But you've got to be profitable. It's like a not-for-profit has to be profitable, right, Donna? You've got to make enough money to reinvest back in your community. So this is like we have a downtown area of so many miles, and this is what's happened to our assessed property value since 2010, which is pretty incredible. It's very incredible. Now, the reason I like that creates more tax revenue. Where does your tax revenue go? Police and fire, which is safety. Infrastructure, including internet-type infrastructure, and it goes into education. Now, aren't those things that are really important to all of us? Because if you don't have those things, you really don't have anything. In fact, if you don't have safety, it's over. Because that's the number one people think of quality of life. Is it a safe community? So people wish to be settled, but it's only by unsettling them is any really hope. So my job in the next so many minutes is to do a bit of unsettling. And I don't do it to who likes to unsettle people? Well, I do. Anyway, so, but you know what? But you got to unsettle people. And sometimes we got to move. I'll go into cities that are really bad, and somebody will say, my family's been here 6 generations. Ew. Shouldn't it be better then? So the reality is sometimes we just got to be able to look at things. I also want to tell you that I happen to love people. And June 30th, in fact, today's his birthday. Today, John Meislick, my best friend, would have been 56 years old. He died June 30th of 2019 of cancer. I'm much older than him. He died at 54. I'm 69, so I was 67 then. When John was dying, he said, tell people you love them. And I want to tell you, since in the last 2 years, I've told more people I love them. But I got to tell you, when you start changing your behavior, you can scare people. You know, I always tell this to people. If you're a boss and you start changing your behavior, you got to tell people you're changing your behavior. For example, Richard, let's say that you decide that you're going to be really recognizing and rewarding people from now on a lot more. And what's your name? Blaze? Right. Well, Blaze, don't be nervous. It's okay, okay? So Blaze, you work for the company, and your name is? Jerry. Okay, so your dad says, or Richard says, hey, Jerry, as soon as Blaze comes in, tell him I need to see him right away. Blaze probably says, do you know what he wants? What did he look like? Did he look upset? Did he look angry? Has he talked to anybody else here today? What's going on? So he walks in, and Richard says, and pretend you're not son, you're employee. Richard says, Blaze, I've been just thinking I need to be better at recognizing people, and I want to start with you. I just want to tell you what a fine employee you are, how we're a better place because of you, and I just want to thank you. You don't say a word. You're wondering when the next shoe's going to drop. You say thank you. You walk out, and Jerry says, what did he want? And you say, they changed his medication. So anyway, so I'm on a board of a big healthcare system in Ohio. Mark Clement runs it. I've known Mark since 1992. So John tells me to tell people I love them. So I'm an out-of-town board member, so he always drives the elevator with me and waits for the car to pick me up. Now, I've known him since 1992, but we've never been intimate. You know, we talk work, we talk maybe how, you know, we do the quick, how's your wife, how are your kids, let's go to work now, stuff. So I ride down this elevator, I'm sitting in the lobby, and my Uber driver comes up. And that's the day I decide to tell Mark I love him. I look at him and said, Mark, I love you. And he looks at me and says, your Uber driver is here, Quint. A little while later, he sent me something. A nice note. So anyway, Beth Keene, one of my great friends who's passed away now, did a presentation called Spinach in Your Teeth. And she tells people when you really love them, you tell them when they have spinach in their teeth. So we'll have a little bit of spinach in your teeth moment. Not much, but a little bit. But please, my intentions are good because I want your children to be staying here. I want your grandchildren to be able to come home. And the other thing is, I will tell you, I go to a lot of cities. You have so much more going on than most. In fact, one of my worries is you're not bad enough to change. No, it really is. I've told that to numerous people. Usually, when do we change? When we're bad. When we get that point. You know, I used to go to the doctor all the time, and she'd say, Quint, you're overweight. Then one day she threw out a new word at me. Congratulations, you're now obese. That word got my attention. So what happens is most of the time we have to get really bad before we get really good. In James Collins' book, The Good to Great, he says most good companies never become great because they sit on good. You're going to have to challenge yourself because you're going to see you're a good city. Not a great city. You're a good city, and I'm going to give you some reasons why. You've got great health care. I'd put that in the great world. Of course, thank you for your sponsorship. Not that there's any direct relationship for that. Did you help sponsor? Okay, now let's not talk about post-secondary education. No, you got a junior college, a community college, you got Lafayette. My gosh, you got a big park that's being built. You got a lot of good things that's just so confusing. They're sort of far apart. There's like, how do you connect these things? Somebody said, you're close to downtown. I said, I don't think I can figure it out. You know, how do we connect this mosaic that you have into one piece of fabric? And that's what we're going to cover a little bit today. So these are the questions, and you can get copies of everything that 283 or so of you filled out, 282, and on a 1 through 10, you were asked to evaluate how you felt. Now, I am not saying this is a valid and reliable survey, because we didn't call cell phone numbers, we didn't say so many young, so many old, anything like that, but it's probably people that really are engaged, they wouldn't fill out the survey. So if you look at almost all the questions, you go from a low of 3.8, which is how good are you at measuring, or you low of 3.4, local government entities aligned, successful. That's always a low number, by the way. If you're waiting for government to be aligned, it won't happen. It might be more aligned, but it's tough. They're elected officials, they got different contingencies. It's a tough game to be an elected official, so it's hard. One thing cities always say to me, Quint, I say, and I did this with Andre, I said, when I'm done, what would you like to have happen? And thank gosh he didn't say, most of them say, we'd like everybody to be on the same page. Now, come on now. When has everybody been on the same page? You know, David, it's like a doctor came up to me one day and said, all the physicians are unhappy. I said, no, they're not. They've never agreed on anything in their entire life. So the reality is, but a 3.8 is you don't measure. You got to measure. You know, we recommend a dashboard, and we recommend a quality of life survey every year, because that tells you, are you making progress or aren't you? And it's a good thing to have. Then you go up, you're about 4s in most of it. Your downtown is a 6, and it really is a 6. And I've seen a lot of 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s. You're a 6. Now, the challenge is that what you want to be? Do you want to be 4, 5, and 6? Now, you have a pretty good athletic program, right? What was your football record last year? I must not have been that great because you're not smiling. Huh? 12-1. You were happy, right? Next year, you go 6-5, which is good. Are you going to be, or 6 and, no, you're not happy. You're not even happy thinking about it, for crying out loud. I got you emotionally unsettled. So the reality is, that's what I'm talking about. When I do this with most cities, they're 2s and 3s. So your challenge is, you're good. That means if you're 2 and 3, usually there's external forces are making you better. You don't have an external force making you better. You can just stay just like this and you'll be okay. You know, your kids won't be here. Your grandkids won't be here. But you'll be okay. You can go visit them, you know, things like that. So that's where you're at. Now, there's some other interesting things. This is pretty cool, though. When you look at, on a 10, how committed are you to making the community the best it can be? It's an 8. Well, that means that you got to move these up. Because if you want to say you're true here, then you got to deal with this. There is one number that's a little alarming. I talked about it earlier. You are pessimistic. Sometimes when you give results, I was in a hospital one time and they had really bad physician engagement, and I was sharing them their physician engagement results, they got mad at me. I said, these are your results, not mine. Don't yell at me. Don't look at me like, what, you nut job there? So the reason this is important is because I think you have rights to be more optimistic. I think you have more positive things than you're giving yourself credit for. And I think if you're pessimistic, how are you going to get other people to be optimistic? Now, we have to look at what's wrong. We have to say we have too many gaps in our downtown. We have to say things like, you got some good things, your opportunity thing you're putting in. Now, you got to make it successful, but that's for entrepreneurship and that, but that's really good. So this is an area where messaging is going to be important. Tomorrow we're going to talk a lot about messaging. And I'm not talking about, some Chamber of Commerce branding program. I'm talking about everyone in this community being able to talk to people and say, here's why I live here and here's why you should. Here's why this is a special place. I encourage you when you come, if you ever fly into Pensacola, to get in an Uber car and say, how do you like Pensacola? And if they don't say they like it, I will pay for your Uber driver. Because that's where it starts. It's people talking about why they live in a place and so on. So let's go now talk a little history. We're going to transition a little bit from you to history. Who used to build great cities? There were 4 key players that built great cities. Number one, there were locally owned banks. Almost all banks were locally owned. What was the advantage of locally owned banks? Loans. Loans for small businesses, even riskier loans. You ever notice when a small bank gets picked up, how tough it gets to get money all of a sudden? Not wrong or right. That's just the way it is. Local media. Almost all of us had our daily paper was a local paper. We had local TV. We had local everything. Local health care. Almost all health care was local. Today, very little health care is local, actually. Most of it is large. In fact, you're very lucky to have the same people, many of the same people. Like, you've been here how long? In this community. In Lourdes? And you did your training, you said, at Lafayette? Right. So you've been, and David, you were here a long time. Pete, you're here for life. But the reality is, we had local health care, and I'll explain this in a bit. And we had a lot of locally owned businesses. Now, you're pretty lucky, because again, you have more locally owned businesses than the norm. I mean, you've got your helicopter, your emergency service. How many employees do you have? 5,000? And you're about $700 million in revenue a year? Yet your corporate headquarters is right here? Yes. So you spend a lot of your money here? Yes. Yep. Isn't that cool? LHC, another big player. So you're very fortunate to have this. Not everybody does. That's why I'd be a little more optimistic. In fact, remember I told you, if you move your company to Pensacola, we can make it worth your time, Richard. that condo I talked to you about on the beach, baby. Usually these are run by executives that could get together in a room and move a community. They don't exist anymore. So what Gallup found out on how you move a community is you got to get a critical mass. So my goal tonight and tomorrow is get you thinking about a burning platform. Because how are you going to rev people up? Your burning platform might be different than ours. You know what our burning platform is? We want to keep our children home. That's our burning platform. Now you got to get critical mass. And we'll talk a little bit later about but this is part of getting the critical mass. Now, this is not my strategy. This is John Cotter from Harvard, who talks about how to create change and sustain change. It starts with a burning platform and a critical mass, because we don't have 4 or 5 people that can drive a community anymore. It's got to be a whole bunch of people that can drive. You're never going to get 100%, but if you can get a critical mass, you can do some things that are quite magical, and you're right at a tipping point. See, most cities are at the beginning. You're at the tipping point, as Malcolm Caldwell will say. How do you get your downtown gaps filled? Because you could have a cool street, but I probably wouldn't walk the whole street because I got to be excited walking the whole street. People only walk 60 feet. They walk 60 feet. If they don't see something, they quit walking. But you're doing some really neat things. One of your big wins, whoever's taken the federal building and putting 60-something apartments in there, whoever that is, you should be thanking them like crazy. Aren't banks excited about our risk-taking? Yeah. No, they're not, because you had to go first. But that's what you need. An optimistic local investor that says, I'll go first, because you got to get more people living downtown, and you've got to program it. You're programming it tonight. I hope all of you go out to the concert. In fact, Andre said beer is on him tonight. Nah, your money's no good. So let me give you some facts now, because it's going to be different than you thought, different than I thought. What makes a vibrant community? Number one, they love the businesses that are in their town that get revenue from somebody else. That's why I would be all over your businesses here that get revenue from outside the community, because they could live anywhere. My customers are not local. I can leave. Gallup corporate offices with 800 employees is in Omaha. And do you know where they were born? Lincoln. The University of Nebraska. Gallup came out of the University of Nebraska, and they were in Lincoln. When Jim Clifton moved to Omaha, he told me when he made the decision to move 800 employees to Omaha, he didn't know even who to tell goodbye to in Lincoln. They hadn't talked to him in so long. So the question is, do you know the 10 companies in this town that get revenue from outside the area and could move if we don't love them? And are you loving them? Number two, entrepreneurship. Great companies grow entrepreneurs. They go people because you're going to have some misses, but you're going to have some wins. Madison, Wisconsin's lucky enough to have the University of Wisconsin-Madison there. You know what they spun out? A little electronic health records company called Epic. Epic's almost bigger than Madison, Wisconsin right now. So are you growing your entrepreneurs? Because that's what's really going to also keep people here. And the third one is, do you have a vibrant downtown? Now, for those of you that say, what's the big deal about downtown? Shouldn't we be spending equal money everywhere? No. And that's one of the challenges you have when you have districts. Everybody wants to spend this much money in each place. But sometimes you got to say, we got to put a chunk of change somewhere that's going to create the revenue to go elsewhere. And so why a vibrant downtown? For one reason, young talent. Young talent want a vibrant downtown. That's why they move to these places. They don't go to Nashville because it's affordable. Have you ever heard anybody say, well, I'm going to Austin, Texas. It's cheap to live there. Yeah, I can't wait to get there. Yeah, then I'm going to go to Nashville. I hear they're cheap. Maybe San Francisco. They probably have some deals going on right now. Then maybe San Diego. I hear that's another inexpensive little place. In Greenville, they're probably giving away stuff there right now. Do you know in downtown Pensacola, we have places for $1 million now? Somebody said the other day, they said, Quint, we need more affordable housing downtown. I said, we had it in 2010. We had a lot of affordable housing. Sure, you need affordable housing, but you have to create the people that can pay the taxes to put the money in that can then go into subsidizing affordable housing. So you got to do both. But I'm saying it's not bad. And have you been accused of, do they like you here? No, I didn't think so. No, it's really bizarre when you do what you're doing. And then you start making the downtown better, okay? And your first name is? EJ. EJ? Yep. Like EJ? EJ. Okay. Here's what they're going to say. You know why he's doing it, don't you? You know why he's trying to make downtown better? Because then his property will be worth more money. That's why he's doing it. You know what? He's going to make money. You ever notice how we get worried when local people make money? But out-of-towners, we brag, come here, you can make a lot of money. You want your local people to make money. You know why? Then they reinvest it back in the community. They put in philanthropy. Let's give EJ a nice round of applause for what he's doing. Here's the bonus. The bonus if you have a local college or university, if it's cranking out entrepreneurs into your community. and you have some research going on. And that research can be magical. Now, I don't show that last one to many communities, because if you give a community a reason not to do something, they grab it. Oh, we can't be good. We don't have a post-secondary place here. But I could do it here because you have it. So, capital follows talent, and talent follows place. And what we've got to do is get all these pieces of fabric here in Lafayette and get them stitched together, because they're not stitched together now. Now, for local people, they might be. Reminds me of a story in Pensacola. We brought in like a walkability expert. So he met with local people. Mort O'Sullivan, one of them, lived there his whole life. He said, it's hard to get around here. Mort said, what do you mean? He said, well, like, it's hard to get from the fish house to Jackson's. And Mort goes, no, it's not. You just go through the parking lot, go down the culvert, go over the railroad tracks, walk along the street, and cut across, and you're right at Jackson's. Now, do you know to Mort that made sense? Because he lived there. So you got to look at a town with fresh eyes. And towns have been built for cars, not people. But today, people want to be in a car that's built for people. So what does talent look for? Well, they look for affordability, but it's not number one. Number one is opportunity and vibrancy. That's what they look for. They will sacrifice affordability. You think of New York's affordable when all these young people were living there? No, they're all jamming in. They're all jamming into a place. Only $7,000 and it's 700 square feet. What a good deal. And these aren't real numbers I make. These are real numbers. These are real numbers. And then when their family situation changes, education becomes important. History does not. Just not to hurt anybody's feelings, but young people don't move to a community because it's historic. And most towns I go to say, but we're historic. I love history. I'm a history guy. We have a history village. So once they come, they might show up. But what they come for is, give me some opportunity, which is work-related, and I want a cool place to live. This is the first generation of people young people have ever chosen where to live and then look for a job. My generation, once you get a job and then you say, do you think you can live here or not? It's a whole different ballgame. So that's that. So here are the gears. Let's go over the gears real quick. First, you have a burning platform. Why do you want to do this? And we're going to talk a lot about that tomorrow, because you got to capture someone's heart. The Heath brothers in their research and their book, Change When Change is Hard, 80% of people will do something based on their heart, 20% will base it on their mind. So I can tell you all you want about raising your tax value, but what will get you more is, I want my kids and grandkids to be able to live here. That's the heart, but you have to choose your own burning platform. So quality of life is in the middle, and the gears are civic IQ, vibrant downtown, economic development, and education. So this is John List. John List is the Department of Economics at the University of Chicago. He wrote the foreword for the book, and thank you, you wrote me such a nice note, in the book, Building a Vibrant Community. Human capital, talent is the community's greatest resource. One that is measured by kindergarten readiness. Did you guys ever get the number for kindergarten readiness yet?
No, the state doesn't provide it publicly yet. They're working on it.
That's a nice little thing to measure. Now, you don't have to wait for the state. There's measurement tools that you could put in place right here. Because if you wait for the state, why? Be the leader in it. So basically, kindergarten readiness means, can a child do certain things so they can succeed in kindergarten? Because if a child is behind in kindergarten, the public school system gets exhausted. Anybody ever complain about the public school system? Oh, you know our problem? It's the public school system. Well, it also could be because your kids aren't ready for kindergarten. And if your kids aren't ready for kindergarten, your public school teachers are carrying a lot of heavy weights to try to catch up. If a girl isn't ready for kindergarten and drops out of high school, 70% will have a baby by the time they're 18. If a boy isn't ready for kindergarten, 60% of them will be in prison at some time in their life. This is my number one passion. I have a not-for-profit. This is what we focus on. How do we get our kids ready for kindergarten? I was talking today, you're building a lot of playgrounds. Are you building brain development into your playgrounds? Most cities don't build brain development in their playgrounds. They build physical development in their playgrounds, but not brain development. Hospitals, we tell a mom lactation methods. We tell mom everything to do with your kid from the neck down. Because you know where kindergarten readiness starts? In the hospitals. Because if we can get mom a tutorial before they leave the hospital, they will understand how to build their baby's brain. 80 to 85% of a child's brain is developed by age 3. When I meet a smart young person, I'll say, did anybody read to you when you were young? Oh yeah, all the time. Somebody was reading to me all the time. 3 million words it's called. Dana Susskind is the researcher. She's at the University of Chicago. Also, because we were chosen as their beta site, Pensacola, Florida. So every mom for the last 3.5 years who walks out of a hospital has had a tutorial on how to build her baby's brain. And now we have peer-reviewed research. And it's very inexpensive to do. So, I've been really nice to the healthcare providers here, haven't I? I'd love to talk to you about this. And it's very inexpensive because you already have the staff there. And this is another thing somebody walks out with. Besides the tutorial, they see a video, University of Chicago, and we have peer-reviewed research. They also get this type of stuff, and then we, of course, research that. And it's pretty cool. Now, we also, I'll tell you one other thing that I'm going to talk about tomorrow. We've also partnered with Harvard. Harvard has a program called Basics, and for $2 a year, a mom, usually a mom, gets 2 text messages per week on how to build her baby's brain and where it's at. $2 a year. And then you can also custom it, so you can send people, like I was talking to your people at Federal Qualified Healthcare Clinic today. You could target women in certain zip codes who might want to come in for pediatric checkups. And if you do this right, the pediatricians buy in and start doing it at their well baby checks. So if there's one thing that changes the world, it's building your baby's brain and building it into your playgrounds. Our ball stadium, you have a great ballpark. You have a great, you're going to have a great football stadium anyway, but you have a great ballpark. Let's go back there. And a great sponsor for that ballpark. So our ballpark, all the stairs are color-coded, alphabetized, and numbered. So children walk up the steps and they learn how to count. They learn shapes, they learn colors. Now, let's move from another gear, which is called economic development. So economic development is going to be a little different than you're used to. Economic development is skill development of small businesses. Over 95% of all jobs are already in, you got them. You got to grow the small businesses. But small business people can't go to Vegas for 2 days for $1,000 to build their skills. My wife runs a coffee shop, an olive oil store, and a kitchen shop. In fact, one of our good customers is right here. I want to thank you very much. Don't you? You love it, love it. So if you'd like to order from the Bodacious Olive, just go to their website. But I'm saying my wife's not going to go to a 2-day training program because she's working it. So what we've done is done creative challenges to build skills of small businesses. We took some empty downtown buildings and we bought them. We how you white box them. And then we did business challenges. So you could get a $50,000 grant that some would go to lease, some would go to capital based on the best business plan. And if you've ever been to Carmen's Lunch Bar, that was one of our business challenge winners. So we create business challenges to fill up that space in the right way. EntreCon is a yearly conference we do for small businesses. We have 120 small businesses that meet every 2 months with a facilitator and a round table. And of course, we have a lot of online training now. That was phase 1. Phase 2, as we learned this in Asheville, we did an asset map. Everything that a small business or entrepreneur might have resources. You probably have as many resources as us, but they're not tight together. Then we have a system called the Spring. So when somebody wants to know about training, development, business plans, they go to a center called the Spring, and I use healthcare terms, we triage them, and we move them into one of these places in there. We've also added an MIT sponsorship program for peer, a little deeper peer, and we've added also something called G-Beta, which is an accelerator program to help the high-end small businesses get them investors, to help them get investors to grow their businesses. We got this idea from the Waltons. because they're trying to do some things in Bentonville, Arkansas. Because, you know, they have to recruit a whole different type of worker to Walmart. Now, they're recruiting all these techies to come to Bentonville. So they've got to make it a cool town, because not every techie says, Bentonville. Isn't that where Sam Walton's office is? Now, so Stuart and Tom Walton are doing some unbelievable things to that community. In fact, they have a conference called Heartland Summit, just about how do we make mid-sized cities cool. And we have a better chance now than ever because of COVID-19, because now people can live more virtual. But they're going to move to the coolest places possible. So now let's go to downtown. I sort of talked about it earlier. Number one, it starts with programming. Like, you are so gutsy. I would have not done what you did. EJ, I said you're gutsy. I have not said you're smart. I want you to know that. Thank you. I waited to make my investment until they programmed the heck out of downtown. So every weekend, hundreds and thousands of people are coming downtown. That's what goes first. Because who wants to move downtown if there's nothing to do downtown?
Well, you know, we're pretty lucky in that regard because we do have programs like that.
Absolutely. You got one tonight. See, so. So what I'm saying is you got the programming. That's what starts it, and you're already there. That's why I said you're at a tipping point. Next is placemaking. How do you take your downtown like a monopoly board and say what should go here? You know, you have that bookstore, which is nice. Every great downtown has an independent bookstore. Do you know what James Fallow says in Our Town, his book Our Towns, and his documentary on HBO? He writes for The Atlantic. He went to 100 cities. You know how you can judge who are the coolest cities right now? Based on craft beer places. I know it sounds crazy, but we have 8 of them now downtown. We have 8 of them. We have Bermuda. We have, you know, it's just sort of cool. Now, I don't even drink, but I think it's pretty neat because you don't have to drink. But so what I'm saying is you place make. Where does this restaurant go? Where goes here? It has to be very purposeful. That's why sometimes it's so hard to do this in a community, because you don't own the land. There's always a couple business owners that sit on property and they decay. You ever seen that happen in a community? And then they sort of, everybody says, well, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna pay for their property, overpay. But you gotta hold your nose periodically and Asheville told us you gotta control key property and you gotta control key land. So we overpaid for a place because it was holding back the rest of the community. So you do placemaking and you play small ball. And what I'm saying is it's one corner at a time, one building at a time, then all of a sudden it all fills in and you sort of have it. So that's downtown. Last is civic IQ. What we've learned and what you're doing today is that you gotta build up the intelligence of the community. So we have this thing called Civic Con. So what we do is on a regular basis, we bring experts. We just started back in person again, just Monday night, that are experts, the best experts in the country. Do you know the #1 parking guru in the United States is called Donald Shoup? He's the #1 guru in parking. How much you should charge, how much rotation you should have. He studies your parking and tells you exactly what you should do. By the way, if you have people complaining about parking and traffic, you're doing good things downtown, okay? That's a positive thing, because you got people at least coming. It helps citizens understand why. We did something on trees. So we have, I don't know, you have any live oaks here? You know how, hey, one day I put a saw by a live oak in front of my house, not to cut it down, just to place the saw there. I had to remove it. I was getting threatening calls from people. So when can you cut them down, when can't? We brought an arborist in, the national arborist from Phoenix. I'm wondering, why does a person that's an arborist live in Phoenix? She's probably fed up on tree fights. But then we voted for a new tree ordinance because we knew the best practices. You know the best practices. Do you know a lane in a city should never be more than 10 feet wide? Because if it's more than 10 feet wide, people speed. People speed, people die. So we had to look at all our streets. We had some crosswalks that were 54 feet. I've been in your community. You got some long, I don't know if I'd cross some of your streets, would you? I'd walk a long way, and it's exciting when they move the interstate up. I mean, you've got so many tipping point things ready to happen. It's amazing. And you have to shift the conversation to get the community unstuck. Like, we deserve to be the best. We can do this. And of course, we collect best practices, and that's sort of what I'll share a lot with tomorrow. So here's CivicCon topics. Here's the speakers. And we have over 12,000 people that watch these. So a speaker speaks, it's live FaceTime. We have over 12,000 people. We hired a new superintendent of school. You know what we did? We brought in 6 great superintendents from around the country for a CivicCon, and they talked about, here's what you should be looking for in a superintendent. So you bring best practices to the organization, and great cities begin with great dialogue. And if you want to go online, you can go online to, and we'll send you all this stuff. All 40 of them, we have 40 of the talks now, are all on tape. Jim Fallows is on tape. Joe Riley from Charleston is on tape. Tom Murphy from Pittsburgh is on tape. Jeff Speck, anybody hear of Jeff Speck? He is the walkability guru of the world. He really is. Mobile just hired him to put a whole walkability plan. Now, you don't have a lot of water here, do you? But do you know that Gina Worth from the company called Scape teaches you how to make your water really hum? How to make it. I didn't even know these people existed. Do you know James Lima's an expert on public money? Where to spend public money to get the greatest investment? Because he says if you're spending public money, you could get a 10 times investment from private development. So don't spend public money in a place where you're not going to get a lot of other private investment around it. It's sort of interesting. They've raised the civic IQ. So as we wrap up here today, this is Chuck Yeager. I'll talk a little bit more about him tomorrow. Chuck Yeager died recently. Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier. Chuck Yeager was a test pilot. I encourage you tonight when you go home to look up on your search engine, just put The Right Stuff movie, Chuck Yeager. There's about a 4-minute videotape, that's all, showing Ed Harris, who played Chuck Yeager, break the sound barrier. Now, everybody thought, they didn't know what the sound barrier was. They just thought there was a sound barrier, and they didn't know at what mile per hour did you break the sound barrier. So they had these test pilots up there going as fast as they could to see what the sound barrier was. The problem was, as you got close to the sound barrier, your plane started shaking. Now, if you were driving a car down the road and your car started shaking, would your first thoughts be, let's put down the throttle? We slow down. So the problem in a community is when we start moving forward, some people want us to pull back the throttle. Some people want to give us turbulence, they call it. So what made Chuck Yeager different? It's a little bit odd. He kept the throttle down. If you watch the movie, his wife, he's driving and the plane is shaking, 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 and then you hear a boom. Now we know that's a sonic boom. If you see the movie, you see his wife think, my husband's dead. You think these people from the government that were funding it turn their head down because maybe this wouldn't work. You saw another test pilot who thought Chuck Yeager was a little bit off, sort of say, I told you so, I told you so, and they think he's dead. And then all of a sudden they look and they see this streak of smoke, and they realize he's still up there. And Chuck Yeager's plane's not shaking anymore. It's actually going really smooth because he's broken the sound barrier. So what I'm saying is, we have to have Chuck Yeager moments in any community. That when the pushback comes, when the people say you shouldn't do this, when the rumors start flying, when the myths are out there, we need to keep the throttle down. Nothing I like better than when a community will drop me a note and say, Quint, I want you to know we're keeping the throttle down. Now let me, as we wrap up here, talk about COVID-19. COVID-19 changed a lot of things. They rearranged the racetrack here. Because there were some cities that were way ahead of others. There are some cities that were in the middle, and there are some cities that were way behind. But all of a sudden, when COVID-19 came, it's like a NASCAR race. The yellow flag went out. everyone got told to go into the pits. Some communities paused. You know, Beloit, Wisconsin, they didn't pause. They had big building projects ready to start, and they were getting pushed back, some of the private people, to pause. And Diane Hendricks, who's the player there, said, no, we're going to keep going. Because when this COVID ends, we want people to know we're open for business. And do you know now that all of her places are popping? So COVID is sort of trailing, and we've all been in the pits. So we're all a little more even now than we've ever been. So the question is, which community's ready to come out of the pits? Which community's ready to accelerate? Which communities are ready to keep the throttle down? Because we've got to keep the throttle down because there's always pushback. I mean, hey, I talk about Pensacola. We got some big issues there too. I mean, I'm a plumber with leaky pipes. Some people ask me questions. I said, I have no idea. Why don't you find out and call me? Because, you know, recently we had a project. A person was going to put 200-something apartments downtown with some retail. He went back to the planning board and took out the retail because the market's not there. So now they're debating, should they approve the project because not the retail not there. My God, you should be so glad you're getting 200 apartments, for crying out loud, because that'll help the retail. So there's always turbulence, but I would encourage you to go through the turbulence. In fact, if you have values, which you do, you have no choice to go through the turbulence because you've come too far. You've come too far to back off right now because you got all the pieces. They just got to be put together a little bit closer. So as we end, this is what I'll end with, and please don't take the word crazy wrong. The world belongs to the crazies. The world belongs to people that believe that we can do something that people tell us we normally can't do. I believe Lafayette can be a great, great city, even better than you think it is, because you ranked it between a 5 and a 6. I think Lafayette can be the next Austin, Texas, or better. The question is, do you? Thank you very much for allowing me to be here. Thank you. All right, well, I encourage you to go out and have some free beer and Andre at the concert, and let's have a vibrant party.